Yo, 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 yo. Welcome again to another show with me, Zikri Khalil, the host of It Matters, because everything we talk about here matters to the planet, matters to humanity, matters to everything, even for societies, and you name it. We have been having a rough ride the past few weeks, simply because a lot of issues coming in and out within the country, out of the country. Slowly things are recovering. Vaccination rate are also going high. But that does not stop us from keeping us bringing all the amazing guests on the show. So today we have someone who represents a very reputable organization. I had the honor to meet him a few times before, but this time he's here with us. He's actually also one of the thought leaders and the general manager over at Reef Check Malaysia. So, ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of virtual applause to Mr. Julian. Hi.
Hi, Zikri. How are you?
I'm overworked, undertraveled, underpaid. What about yourself?
Definitely undertraveled. I've been a prisoner in KL now for I don't know, several long months it seems like. But well, at least I can't complain about that. My team and I are doing the best we can in the circumstances as the virus is spreading to remote areas. So it's just hitting another area that we work, Palamantanani in Sabah. They've had their first cases. So we're following the SOPs. We're doing our best to carry on with the programs. It is, as you say, a difficult time at the moment.
Yeah, it does feel like it's at the point where your passport think it's in the prison because of this whole COVID. If they had a life, of course. Yeah, it's bad joke. But back to the main person here, Julian. I mean, you've been here. You've been with Reef Check since 2007, which is quite a long time ago. I would say that's 14 years from now. I mean, is Reef Check the only thing you're working on, or?
Oh yeah.
Oh wow.
This job keeps me busy 7 days a week. If there were 8, I would be working 8. It's immensely absorbing. It's very challenging and it's very enjoyable. Okay. I'm one of those people that is very, very lucky that I love what I do. I absolutely love it.
I think a lot of people have what you have.
14 years wasn't the plan when I first started, but this is where it's taken me. I go with the flow these days.
Beautiful, yeah. Beautiful. But prior to Reef Check, a bit of your background, I only know that the only thing I can find, with my very poor research skills, you were from Swansea University. Am I correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But what is more about you?
See my Facebook page. Okay, so I came to Malaysia in 1998.
Okay.
When I was working for a British company, a British environmental consulting company. I spent 2 years doing that, and then they sold off the business to a local company, and it was either work for them or go back to the UK. I didn't want to do either, so I followed a dream, and I moved out to Pulau Tioman to open my own dive center, which I did, and I lived the island life for 6 years, and I loved every minute of it. I loved teaching diving, the whole thing. And then it was time to move back to KL, so we moved back. My wife and I moved back to KL.
I see.
But while I was living on the island, we got introduced to the Reef Check guys. There was a presence of Reef Check in Malaysia already since about 2001. My wife was a member of Malaysian Nature Society. Through a friend of hers, they heard about Reef Check and said, "Hey, we'll try it out." So we've always been quite conservation minded, and so we said, "Yeah, bring the guys out and show us how it all works." And that was in about 2003, if I recall. So we did some initial surveys, we did some bits of training, but it never got much traction, mainly because of lack of funding. So I moved back to KL in 2006 with my wife to open a new business, like I said. And because I was in KL instead of on Tioman, it was much easier to talk to the guys from Reef Check who were at the time based at University of Malaya. And, a conversation led to another conversation, led to another conversation. And then somebody said, "Hey, I can get some funding to get this thing started off." And so we filled in the forms and Because I was the one that filled in the forms and my signature went on it, I became the project manager. And then quite by accident, we were training up a guy to take over full time, and he decided he didn't want to do it. So at the end of that 1 year project in August 2007, when we got Reef Check registered as a company, I became the head of it, temporarily part-time, 2 days a week. And as you said, 14 years later, here I stand. It's not 2 days a week anymore. But that's it. Just how it happened. It just kind of grew from me, and then me and my first staff, Daniel, and then we had Ruth join us, and it's just grown. We're now, I think, 17 or 18 people.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened. We have a presence on Tioman Island. Alvin is our senior program manager, lives there with his wife Sue and their young son. And then we have 4 locals that we employ, and they're doing community-based conservation work. Mantanani, we have Asmin and Faisal and Diana, 3 people on the island. We've got 3 people based in Mersing, working on the Mersing Islands. And then there's me and Teresa in KL, that's it. So we're very small, central team. Most of the work is done out on the islands.
No, that's amazing. I mean, I think the flow just kicked in. I don't know, I don't think it's luck. I think it's, the more you manifest on the work that you are so passionate about, things just conspire, I mean, people are living in the island, working on a passion role in saving the planet. Where do I sign up? You know what I mean? So like for people like that, I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah, and I'm stuck in KL. So they're having a great time.
I mean,
I think I've been there. I lived on the island, right? And when I was running the dive center, a lot of people would say, well, it's nice to come for holiday, but I'd go crazy after a few weeks. Well, it's the sort of place you have to want to work. You have to want to live there. Alvin, I don't think Alvin's ever going to leave Tioman. He loves living on the island. He and his wife both. It's a great place to bring up a kid. They have a lot of friends amongst the local community, and they're doing good work. So, and it's an idyllic island. You've got the sea right next to you. You've got rainforest behind you. So
everything.
Yeah, for sure.
So being there for quite some time now, I mean, I want to hear from you, about more the how big of a problem is our underwater ecosystem, our coral reefs. Because the other day I talked to Adam from Save Our Seahorses. Yeah, he was just focusing on seahorses. I mean, a lot of our audience, including me, had no idea how big of an important role seahorses play. Same with another doctor who I interviewed from Global Environmental Center, talked about mangroves and how they're so important, especially the bats that plays a part in the mangroves ecosystem to keep our durians as good as possible. I mean, he's very professor, just stating facts. But our coral reefs, we've known about this for quite some time. I think it's general knowledge for most people in the world. What is it that we don't know that is terribly gone wrong?
Ooh, so there's an interesting question. Let's talk about what they are and how important they are first. Malaysia is one of the biggest per capita consumers of seafood. Guess where that seafood comes from? And don't say the ocean. Coral reefs are a breeding ground and a feeding ground and a habitat for about a quarter of a marine species. So they are a very important source of fish for coastal communities. They also host different types of species of fish that spend part of their life on the coral reef, but then migrate to become pelagic species, open water species. Guess what? We eat those too. So without the coral reef, the breeding ground, the feeding ground, the maturing ground, the source of a lot of fish that we eat has gone. And if the reef goes, the fish goes. That's one thing. Second thing is that they are part of the climate regulation system. So they do absorb CO2, not as much as ecosystems like seagrass, but they're an important carbon sink. Third, we can talk about their role in protecting coastlines, because the reef in front of the beach will slow down the waves. so that the waves don't hit the sands, hit the coastline as hard, and so the force is attenuated and the damage, the erosion is reduced. We have seen in the last few weeks in Mantanani, literally meters of beach have disappeared during a strong storm, and beachfront houses were starting to be affected by it. So, I'm not saying that's only because of the coral reef, but that's another of their functions. So they have a variety of what we call ecosystem services. They have a variety of functions and they provide a variety of services. But never mind that. Let's talk about our own experiences on the islands.
Yeah.
Most tourism to Tioman is marine-based tourism. People come to either dive or snorkel. Same with Redang, same with Perhentian, same with Tengol. So if the reefs are not there anymore, why are people coming? There's 3,600-700 people live on Tioman, something like 250,000 tourists per year in the before times. And so they all rely on tourism for their jobs, which of course is a problem at the moment. We can talk about that separately. But in normal times, tourism is the main employer on the island.
Yeah.
So what happens if the reefs go? Then the tourists go. So what do they do for a living? And it's not just them. It's the transport companies bringing them to the islands. It's the accommodation in the coastal towns like Mersey, where people stay overnight before they go to the island, the restaurants and so on, transportation to Mersey and so on. So the whole economic chain of getting people to the island and then putting them up there and feeding them and taking them diving and snorkeling is huge. I did an estimate a few years ago that the three islands, Redang, Perhentian and Tioman, are probably worth about 500 million ringgit per year in marine tourism activities. Some divers, some snorkelers. That includes the accommodation and the food and the diving and so on. Making a few assumptions, but 500 million ringgit a year, don't we think that's kind of worth thinking about?
Yeah.
So we know what they do. We know how important they are. What's going wrong? So we talk about two different types of problems with coral reefs. One is what we call local impacts, and one is global impacts. The local impacts is things like dumb tourists standing on the reef or kicking the reef with a fin. And everybody says, yeah, well, I only kicked a little bit of the reef, but there's 250,000 of you going through there each year. So if you each just kick a little bit of the reef, what's the cumulative damage going to be? Snorkel is the same. Throwing an anchor into the water to moor a boat while you're at a dive or snorkeling site. There's a little bit of that still goes on. Tioman, we've largely eradicated it, but it's a problem in other areas. What about waste management? Mantanani has no waste management system. The ocean is the waste management system. So the trash builds up, it goes in the ocean. But it's a remote community. What are the locals supposed to do with their waste? They can't landfill it. The island's too small. They can't burn it because it's toxic. So they use the ocean. There must be better ways to resolve that problem. Sewage treatment. None of the islands has integrated sewage treatment. So resorts are using septic tanks, for example. Now, if you look at Malaysian water treatment requirements, septic tanks are a perfectly acceptable way of dealing with sewage waste, as long as they're designed right and they're maintained right. Well, guess what? On the islands, they don't get maintained right because it's distant and it's difficult to do it. So there's now sewage pollution going into the water. So all of these little local problems kind of add up, they accumulate, and instead of one small problem, we're then dealing with several problems which become a bigger problem, a bigger impact.
Wow.
Those we can manage because we can train divers and snorkel guides to be more eco-friendly. And in fact, we have programs for both of those things. We run the Green Fins program for dive operators, which helps them to reduce their impacts. And we have an eco-friendly snorkeling guide training program for snorkel guides, which again helps them to reduce their impacts. Sewage treatment you can manage with a bit of effort. We did some work a couple of years ago on Tioman where we had some of the septic tanks desludged, and that then improves their efficiency, and therefore the amount of pollution escaping into the water is reduced. So that's all good. We can do that through adequate management and stakeholder participation and working with communities and so on. The bigger problems are the climate change related things. We've all seen now. I don't think anybody can possibly doubt that climate change is a thing now. It's been doubted for a long time by many people. But what have we seen this year? We've had storms, we've had raging forests, we've had floods on the east coast, the Antarctic. It's all over the place. Look at the
Yeah.
IPCC report if you don't believe me. All the evidence you need is in there. So how does that affect us? Stronger storms. The reefs in Terengganu last year or the year before, time passes me by, but we had Tropical Storm Pabuk come through Terengganu, and it hit Redang and Perhentian, and the wave strength was damaging the shallow reefs. So that's one of the first examples of storm damage we've seen in Peninsular Malaysia. It's damaging East Malaysia, but it's the first we've seen here. So the shallow reefs are all broken up. How do we fix that? Bleaching caused by ocean warming is another long-term threat that we've been monitoring for a while. As a local manager, can we cool the ocean down? No. Can we reduce CO2 emissions? No. All we can do is make the reefs as healthy as possible locally, and hope that governments get on top of this climate change thing. So you've got those two things. You've got the big threats, the external ones, and the local ones, which we can deal with. That's the critical thing. We can deal with those problems.
Would you say that the local islanders that you have worked with have already have the base foundation on protecting the coral reefs with their own sense of responsibility, compared to how it was maybe 10 years ago, knowing how big of a impact it is already having on our, not just the seafood, but the whole environment?
I would say there are people within the communities that are aware of these issues, and there are people that are not aware or not interested and never will be.
Okay.
There are people come along a continuum, right? It's always like this in any field. You get some who agree, some who disagree. I think the problem, though, is not so much local awareness. It's more how can local people participate, because the way that the islands, the way that the marine parks, as they're called, are managed, doesn't make it easy for locals to participate. And there's a sense of disconnection. There's a sense of disenfranchisement almost when the government is telling them what to do. The government is saying this is going to happen without much meaningful consultation with the locals. And this has been going on for many years since the marine parks were established in 1994. So jump back a step. The islands off the east coast, Redang, Tioman, Perhentian, and so on, plus a couple of islands off the west coast, and various areas in Sabah are protected as marine protected areas, MPAs, which in Malaysia we call marine parks. And those protected areas are meant to reduce activities that damage the marine resources. So fishing is not allowed, various collecting activities is not allowed. So in the marine parks off the east coast, there's no fishing allowed in the marine park. Diving, snorkeling still allowed, tourism activities still allowed. But if you want the locals to really buy in to improving management, to strengthening management, and this is not just Malaysia, this is worldwide, then the locals need to feel a sense of participation. And when the parks were set up, as I said, in 1994, they were more imposed than consulted. And even since then, 25 years later, whatever it is, we were still seeing some resentment from the locals. Oh, we don't like the marine park because. Actually, I think they've just done some research on Tioman. Most of the locals there understand and accept the idea of the marine park, so that isn't the problem. It's more the, can we participate, please? Because the decisions that are taken around this management body affect our lives. You want to change the rules, then it's going to affect our livelihoods. Change tourism, increase tourism rates, all that sort of thing can have an impact on us. So you think they deserve to be consulted, really. And I think that consultation process could be improved. So that's one of the things we're working on at local level now. So we know what the threats are. We know what's going wrong. We know the local ones that we can deal with, and the Marine Parks Department guys are dealing with some of those. But I think one of the things that we would like to see is more local participation, so the locals have a voice. And don't forget, the locals know a lot more about their island than some marine park officers who don't really understand the island. They're not from the island. They don't live there. So why not ask the locals? Because they have a lot of local knowledge. Where are the reefs? Where are the mangroves? Where do things happen? So it's definitely worth including them.
It is pretty much new to me to some of what you mentioned. From a government level to from the marine park perspective, that is very refreshing. I did not know of such complications to get the the backing of even the locals, and I can understand how it was more imposed rather than being accepted. I've heard stories of those back in those days
Yep.
because there wasn't much awareness. But from a much broader society's perspective, you always gonna have these naysayers, the ones who are just like, they'll survive. They're just taking it lightly, although they accept that it's a problem. But what would you say to those people who are not just not feeling the direct impact of not saving the coral reefs, other than saying, "Yo, you want to save your seafood? This is the place to go."
Yeah, it's something we struggle with all the time.
Oh, wow.
We sometimes call coral reefs the invisible ecosystem. You look out of your window, you can see trees, right? You can see
Right.
rainforests. We all know what they look like, but you're only going to see a coral reef if you spend time out on the islands and you want to go diving or snorkeling. So, to a lot of people, they are largely unknown uh, assets. Um, how do we get through to them? There's no silver bullet for this stuff. I'm sure you've spoken to other conservationists who give a similar sort of message, um, that it takes time, it takes education, it takes patience, um, and we just have to keep on bashing away at it. I'll give you an example. We did some education with the school on Tioman back in 2009, 2010. We were actually covering all of the three main islands, Tioman, Red Egg, and Prentium. And this is 2009. So a year or so ago, one of the kids, who at the time was 10, 11 years old, who participated in the program, bumps into one of my staff and says, "I remember I'm not supposed to eat turtle eggs." Right? So 10 years later, the lessons have been learned, and hopefully we've changed this current generation of they're not school kids anymore, they're decision makers. They have economic power, they can make decisions, and they can make a decision to eat a turtle egg or not to eat a turtle egg. So I think education is very important. The problem is a lot of emphasis on the coastal communities. So the people that live with the turtles, well, people that live with the turtles kind of understand what they're for, and they tend not to eat turtle eggs. So how do we get to the kids in the schools in the cities? You know, people that never go to the coast, maybe they'll pop down to Port Dickson for the weekend, or go out to the coast for a day on the beach, but never really get to understand and appreciate marine ecosystems and what they are, what they look like, and how wonderful they are, and then how important they are in terms of food, in terms of tourism and jobs and so on. It's all about education, and there's just not enough people doing enough of it.
Hmm.
We need to do more. It's a constant thing, but it works. We know it works. We've got to experience. We have experience of it working.
Yeah, I feel you on that, and I thank you for enforcing on this concept of the only way is to have more necessary education on things that really matter, which is what this show is all about. Um, so I wanted to also present this platform as well to kind of tell the audience where they can do more to help Reef Check Malaysia and the like. If you guys want more information, you can always go to their website. Their website is already there. I'm more than happy to share, well, not Julian Hyde's phone number, but but their organization's handle, where you can just go and directly talk to them, see how you can get involved. Yeah, you don't have to be Malaysian, right? You can be of non. All right, good. So if you're non-Malaysian living in Malaysia, you are more than welcome to join this very impactful organization. And I believe you also have a few projects running. So we also want to help and share to those who are looking to help save our coral reefs. You have a restoration project happening all year round, and these are in various islands. So, and if you have a party license, if you love scuba diving but want to scuba, go diving that really matters, go join Reef Check. And there's a project on here where you can go and check and have a look. And time flies when you're having fun. I was like engaging with your conversation, man. Apart from us always in a bar, So this is much more, entertaining for me and the audience. So I just can't thank you enough, Julian, for making time. Do you have any last words you would like to say to those who are going through a rough time with the pandemic, or how can you give your inspirational juice to get them lift up and try and save the coral reefs?
That's asking a lot. I've spent the morning on the phone to my colleagues running programs in remote islands because I'm concerned that the health of my staff is compromised. Mantanani's just had its first COVID cases. It's not easy to get off the island if somebody's taken sick.
Wow.
So we're seeing it from the sharp end as well. I'm safe here in KL. I've had my jabs, but it's not happening outside. We need to take care of each other. We need to watch out for people. We need to be careful what we do. We need to follow those SOPs. The masks work, people. Please stop listening to internet gossips and start listening to scientific experts and your doctors. Get vaccinated. And join our program on the current International Coastal Cleanup campaign, which is running at the moment. So you can make a real contribution straight away from your kitchen.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Julian. I will definitely ping you very, very soon with all the other networks that we have, and then let's make it happen. And thank you again for your time and your knowledge and your wisdom. So take care, buddy.
Thank you very much. See you.
Anytime. Cheers.